How's it going, everyone? Welcome to the Fantasy Fanatics MMA podcast. I am James Lynch. He is JHK. JHK, how are you, sir? How's everything?
Everything's good, man. I was going to take a week off of, the hectic schedule, but man, I couldn't, man. I just felt like I was falling behind because everybody else is doing so much. So I got back into it, but it's all good, man. I'm having fun. And this show, man, love doing this show. It's
So do I. So do I. By the way, I should mention this. My mom watches this show. She loves loves the show. She tunes in every time. So shout out to my mom who mentioned that the other day, which I thought was kind of cool as well. Just want to remind everyone to make sure you download the Fanatics MMA app. That's where you can get all your picks in. We don't have any MMA events this weekend, but make sure you get your picks in early for UFC 264. I know we're going to be talking about that a little bit today as well. And if you guys have any questions, just leave them in the chat. Basically, if you haven't watched the show before, we preview an upcoming notable fight, and then we do a Q&A after. So after we're done the breakdown, we can get your questions. So get them in as soon as you want. Today's show, we're going to be talking about kind of a surprising main event, something we just found out, I think it was last week, a new main event for July 17th. It was supposed to be Yair Rodriguez and Max Holloway. Of course, we previewed that fight. That fight is no more, with Max Holloway getting out of the fight due to injury. And instead, we have Islam Makhachev and Thiago Moisés headlining this July 17th card. So that's going to be a week after McGregor and Poirier on the UFC Fight Night card. Just first, John, your reaction to this being the main event. I was a bit surprised considering some of the other fights in the card, but at the same time, I think they're going all in on Islam Makhachev.
Yeah, that's probably it right there, right? It's not like they're going to be going all in on Thiago Moisés, right? It doesn't seem like they've had like much faith in Thiago Moisés. I don't know if I'm saying that, but wrong, or if I'm digging into Moisés too much. But even Makhachev, to be honest with you, he's not the most popular fighter either. So I don't know. They must be going all in on Makhachev. I have no idea, man. It's confusing to me why this is the main event.
So I don't have an issue with like two prospects headlining a card like this, because the fight nights, let's be honest here, and this is something I talk to fans about a lot at nauseum, to be honest, is, I think fight nights should be a showcase of the up and coming talent. We've seen this time and time again where they have like a fight night card. It's two prospects, whatever prospect wins, that's a prospect you'll remember because they were in a main event. I have no issues with that. So from that perspective, I don't have a problem with Makhachev and Moisés being in the main event. I mean, these are two of the brightest prospects in that division right now, if you're looking at the overall, in terms of their age, in terms of their experience and everything. So I'm totally fine with that. My issue here is, and I know some people are going to disagree with me when I say this, you've got a former champion on this card, Michel, who's making a retirement comeback. Her opponent, Mario Renault, it's going to be a retirement fight. I kind of wonder if they missed the mark by not making that the main event, just because, and I know fans, say what you want about whatever, I mean, those types of fans or whatever, but it is an interesting fight because Tate's been off for so long. Renault just lost her last fight. There's a lot of intrigue there. So I do wonder why they didn't go with that. But again, it seems to me like they're very high in Islam Makhachev, and you even just hear the fan reaction, John. I do see it a lot. A lot of people think this guy is Khabib 2.0, or that he's going to be like Khabib. And I already see people saying that this guy's going to be a future title challenger. We'll slow the brakes on that a little bit. I'll get into the breakdown in a bit, but I think it's more of a case of the UFC really thinking long term and thinking that Makhachev is going to be like Khabib. So I think that's why we're in the spots, so to speak, or whatever. But that's why we're here, is sort of what we have. But wanted to sort of lead into how we got this fight put together. As we usually do when we talk about the matchups coming to fruition. And this is a case of, I'll be honest, and I'm with the fans on this one that have sort of said this. I mean, a lot of guys don't want to fight Islam Makhachev, and I get that. He's a very dangerous opponent. You saw what he did in his last fight to Drew Dober. I think there is some people being like, what's the reward in this of me fighting a guy like Islam Makhachev? So I do sympathize with the Makhachev fans and Makhachev himself that he's not fighting a ranked opponent, because he should be. He just beat a ranked opponent in Drew Dober. He should be fighting a ranked opponent. But as far as, someone outside of the top 10, Thiago Moisés is a great opponent here. Here's a guy that, I've been covering for a very long time, since he was back in RFA when he could barely speak English, John. You should go watch the interview I have on my channel from, I want to say, like 2017, 2018. It was me having to repeat the question over and over because his English was not great. Now we can have full-fledged conversations in English, and it just shows you how much he's learned since being in the U.S. He moved from Brazil to Florida to train an American top team. So he's really made some progress. So I really like seeing that, we've got a guy in Makhachev who hasn't been that active and has all this, hype behind him, against a guy in Thiago Moisés who, and I interviewed him and he mentioned this in the interview. He's like, I should be getting this hype. I'm the guy that's put on a good record in the UFC. I've got some good wins. And he's really turned things around in that last performance he had against, I think it was Hernandez, was just another great performance as well. So we got here because nobody in the top 15 wanted to fight Islam Makhachev, and Thiago Moisés is like, yeah, sign me up. I should be the guy, not you, Islam Makhachev. So your thoughts on just how this fight came together?
I thought it was a kind of a surprise that they gave this fight to Thiago Moisés. I thought Thiago Moisés was going to fight someone else. Islam, with all the hype, and if you put their resume side by side and look at the names and who Islam beat compared to who Thiago beat, Islam does have the better resume. Let's just be honest with that, right? He did beat, Drew Dober. Drew Dober, he probably is ranked higher or better than most of the guys that Thiago has beaten in his UFC run. So when you look at it like that, I thought Islam was gonna get the RDA fight, right? He was supposed to fight him in 2020. And then RDA got tested positive for COVID, right? I thought they were going to put that fight back together. I felt like that would have been the fight to make. No, they had the fight scheduled twice, right? And then it just felt.
Yeah, the second time was I thought it was the Makhachev who I think he had an injury, and so RDA fought Paul Felder. So from that standpoint, not to jump in here, but I can understand Dos Anjos being like, I don't want to fight you, because he picked up a win in between there. So in some ways, he should be ahead if you're looking at it that way. And it was a good win over Paul Felder. I know Felder hadn't been as active, but still, it's a very decent win. So
I look at the win over Drew Dober. It's worth more than the win over Paul Felder, in my opinion, because Paul Felder, he's retired now. He's not even an active fighter anymore, right? So I don't know. I'm just saying.
Would Paul Felder beat Drew Dober? That's my question. I think he would.
That's a close fight, but yes, he would go in there with the advantages. I feel like Felder is a little bit better all-around fighter than Drew Dober, but you never know when they actually fight. But the thing is, with Islam, if he loses this fight, this is a big chance, right? This is a big gamble he's taking with Thiago, because in that 10 to 15 range of fighters, Thiago might be the most complete fighter. If I'm, I don't know if that.
No, you're 100% right. He's good everywhere. He's more of a jiu-jitsu guy, and then he's sort of evolved his stand-up a bit. You saw him go toe-to-toe with a guy like Alex Hernandez. So I'm totally with you there. It's a very well-rounded matchup here for Makhachev that he's the opponent he's going to be facing.
Yeah. So moving on from that, I feel like Thiago goes in here and he does feel like he deserves the hype, and I feel like a lot of fighters deserve hype, but now it's time for him to go in there and prove it, right? That's what he's doing right now with this matchup.
Let's start with Islam Makhachev. I think people forget he made his UFC debut back at UFC 187, the Johnson and Cormier card, and that was that was in May of 2015. So it's been 6 years that he's been in the UFC. You don't think of it being that long just because, I don't know, for whatever reason, but part of it is because he hasn't fought a whole bunch over the last couple of years. I'm going to do my math here: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 7, 8 fights since 2015, which if you overall that's because there were some gaps in there. I think 2015 to 2016 there was a bit of a gap. 2017 to 2018 there was a bit of a gap. So there's like these little gaps here, and of course he didn't fight at all in 2020. I know there's some bad luck there as well. So a few gaps in there on top of that. Now a lot of stoppage wins. That's something not to sneeze at. And here's another thing with him as well. You look at his early career. A lot of good competition in there, 8-1 guys, guy who's 6-0, 25-8, 17-1. Leo Kuntz, getting the win there as well. In his UFC debut as well. The fight after that, though, he got knocked out by Adriano Martins, which I think has slowed. I think when you look at sort of the hype on Makhachev, that is the one thing where he does have a loss. It's not like this is an undefeated guy, although outside of that, he's looked outstanding. Good wins over Chris Wade, Nick Lentz, Gleison Tebow. The Cajun Johnson fight, Cajun was on his way out anyways. Tsarukyan was a good win. I think that was a short notice fight, if I'm not mistaken, in that one. And then, Davey Ramos, good win. Drew Dober, the best win, though, I think. Drew Dober is by far the best win he's had so far in his career. Now, he is very similar to Khabib in that his grappling's, standing, he'll take you down. But I think his submission game is very good. His stand-up's good. He's a very well-rounded fighter, and he's a guy that's going to make you work for every position in the game, right? So, or in the cage, I should say. And that's something that Thiago's got to be prepared for in this fight as well. Just only fought earlier this year, but did not fight all in 2020. That's a little bit concerning. And he's 29 years old, so he's in the prime of his career right now, but you do wonder if the activity could be a little bit better overall in terms of what he brings to the table. Now, in terms of the height and the reach, Islam Makhachev is 5'10" with a 70.5-inch reach. Thiago Moisés is 5'9" with a 70.5-inch reach. So same reach advantage, a slight height advantage for Islam Makhachev. And one thing I think people forget in this fight, Thiago Moisés is younger. He's 26. Makhachev's 29. So that is something to sort of consider here as well. Both come from great camps. Makhachev obviously training with Khabib and does some work. So he trains back in Russia, obviously with his team. And then he also has AKA. He trains there as well. I remember years ago, I think I definitely brought this up before when I've been talking to you guys. I remember interviewing Cormier back in, I want to say like 2016. And I asked him, I said, who's the best guy in the gym they don't know about? And he said, Islam Makhachev. He's like, I think this guy's going to be a champion. And that's a teammate. There's going to be some bias there. But for Daniel Cormier to make that endorsement years ago, I think speaks, volumes to what Islam Makhachev's able to do. And let's be honest, that last fight against Drew Dober, that was a dominant win. To go out there and finish Dober in the third round when Dober had a nice winning streak heading into that, really impressive. So that to me said, look, this guy is definitely not overhyped. Okay. That win over Drew Dober, very good. Is he a title challenger? I need to see a little bit more. And I think even after this fight, I don't think we can say he's a title challenger because he's got to fight someone in the top 5. Now, like I said, I sympathize with him because there are guys that do not want to fight him or that have, said, look, not for me, too much of a risk, doesn't make a lot of sense here. So I do sympathize with Makhachev from that perspective, but this is another opportunity for him to go and shine. But the thing is, though, he's a huge favorite in this fight and the pressure's on him and everyone has all these expectations. Like I said, fans think he's going to be the next champ. There's, living in the shadow of Khabib. There's so many things that go into this. Thiago Moisés loses this fight, big deal. He's young enough where one of these losses is not going to, derail his career. But for Makhachev, yeah, I think he could turn things around too if he loses this as well. But there's so much more at stake for him because of the expectation as well. So your thoughts on Islam Makhachev when he brings to the table in this fight?
You know what's interesting about this matchup and all of his matchups in the UFC, he has been favored heavily in every matchup against Drew Dober, Davi Ramos, Arman, Cage, and John. All of them, he's been favored, right, to win the fight. And most of the time he's won, right? He's only been finished one time or even lost once. But you know what, though? Like you said, he's a strong grappler. A lot of people compare him to Khabib, and there are some comparisons there, right? There's a few differences, right? One thing that's interesting about his grappling or his wrestling is he utilizes a lot of trip takedowns. And that's so important when you have the underhooks or you're in that clinch, right? Which he gets a lot of those. And that's something different from Khabib. Khabib really doesn't utilize that too much. He's always usually using the fence, single legs, double legs and stuff like that. But the only chink that I see in his armor is his striking. I don't think his striking is as good as people say it is. That's just my opinion. Because I watched a couple of the fights. I watched the Arman fight, the Ramos fight, and I watched the Drew Dober fight. That was the last 3 fights he's had, right? He got dropped by a jab from Ramos. And Ramos is a grappler, right? He was looking to grapple that whole fight. And I believe the only time that they actually grappled was in the 3rd round when Ramos got kneed and he dropped. And then that's when they went to the ground. And then, Islam, finished the fight from there and won the decision. The Arman fight, it looks really good now because Arman, he's a top 15 guy now, right? And I think he's a lot better than that fight when he fought Islam. So Islam, that's a good win. Man, it's hard to say like what his ceiling is. A lot of people think that he's a champion. And I talked to DC, what was it, late last year? He said the same exact thing. I was like, who's going to become the champion when Khabib leaves? He just said the same thing. He said, it's Islam. I'm a homer. And, that's one thing you could respect DC about is that he doesn't hide that he's a homer. Like he's gonna go for his guys, and is he gonna prove us right? I don't know, man. But yeah, Islam is a talent, and we haven't seen the best of him yet. That's what makes him so exciting. But the hype, it's kind of justified somewhat, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, the record overall is good, 19-1. I mean, you can't just amass that by, beating nobodies. Like he's done a very good job and a lot of really good wins, a lot of stoppage wins as well as far as Makhachev. Okay, let's get to Thiago Moisés here. Again, very familiar with this guy, 26 years old, 5'9", 70.5-inch reach, comes to us from American Top Team, made his MMA pro debut in 2012. Made his UFC debut back in 2018, November 2018. So he made his debut 3 years later than Islam Makhachev did, and he lost. It was to Beneil Dariush, and I think I picked Thiago Moisés in that fight, to be honest, because I think Dariush either was coming off the loss to Hernandez or it was very close to that, and I thought, well, Moisés has got knockout power, he could probably do it. So definitely wrong on that one, but and then of course they beat Holloway, who's not in the UFC anymore, and then he beat Damir Ismagulov, who's done quite well in that division. So that's not a bad loss to have either. The Michael Johnson fight was interesting because I thought he lost the first round in that fight, and then he was able to come back and make adjustments and get the finish in that one. And to finish Michael Johnson by submission is very impressive because I don't think Johnson had been submitted, not recently anyways. So that was a really good win. And that was 25 seconds into the second round in that fight as well. So big win there for him. He followed that up with a win over Bobby Green, which Bobby Green's a tough guy. Usually Bobby Green takes you to the decision and then it's a coin flip, and he ended up getting that one. And then the Alex Hernandez fight, someone who's, similar age and really good knockout power. He was able to go out there and basically outstrike Alex Hernandez in that fight. So you're seeing the well-rounded game from a guy like Thiago Moisés throughout his career as well. Again, we talked about the team, American Top Team. He's getting to work with high-level guys. Dustin Poirier. He's in the gym with Edson Barbosa and just so many good talents in that gym. So, I mean, camp for camp, these guys have both had it made pretty well. Like if you look at what he's been able to do here, and I think that's another sort of feather in his cap here as well. And you look at earlier in his career, there's a lot of submission wins, but lately you're seeing some some good stand-up as well. He did actually have a head kick TKO win on Contender Series back in 2018. That's what got him in the UFC. So really well-rounded game. I'm looking at the odds here, John, and I get the hype behind Makhachev, but the odds, in my opinion, are way off here. I think this should be a little bit closer with what Moisés has been able to do. Yes, like you mentioned, the level of competition definitely favors Islam Makhachev in this fight, but Moisés, we don't even know how good he is. He could be even better than he was in the last fight at 26 years old. We haven't, I don't even think, seen the best version of him yet. With Makhachev, he's 29. Maybe he's there now. Maybe he's also getting better. We're going to find out, but I think this is a spot where Moisés could definitely surprise in the matchup because of how, like you said, the striking is maybe a weak point for Makhachev. Moisés, I think, is evolved a little bit better in that department here. On the ground, I mean, we'll have to sort of see what happens there. I think Makhachev has the advantage, obviously, with the wrestling and the grappling, but the stand-up, I think Moisés might have a little slight edge there as well, too. So your thoughts on Thiago Moisés and what he brings to the table in this fight?
I went back and watched the Beneil Dariush and the Ismagulov fight, and one thing that I noticed from those two fights to his most previous fight against Alex Hernandez, he's much bigger and much more muscular than he was back then, right? Mm-hmm. So like his stature, like I'm pretty sure the strength and conditioning, he's been working on that so much. And I feel like that's a part of why he wins too. He's not as small, I guess, compared to the other lightweights, and he's probably much stronger and he can match the strength. One thing that's good about him too is that he can fight off his back. A lot of his submission wins are off his back. Triangles, arm bars, right? Those and guillotines. And one thing that he's not afraid to do is to jump for guillotines. He can jump for gillies all day. I forgot who I think in the Beneil Dariush fight, he went for like 3 guillotines. That's why the fight ended up on the ground so much, is because he took the guillotine, and he was close to it with some of them. It's just, Beneil Dariush is very good on the ground, right? Mm-hmm. And then the Ismagulov fight, that one was just, Ismagulov is just so good, man. I think he's one of those fighters that no one's going to want to fight too eventually. Yeah. He's going to be one of those Islam guys, right? And I think a lot of guys from that area are like that. But with the Michael Johnson, Bobby Green, Hernandez, all good performances, showed his elevation in his striking, because we thought he was just a jiu-jitsu guy, and I'm very impressed by how he's transitioned into a striker too. I mean, not like other guys where they just felt he'll use the jiu-jitsu when he needs to. Now he just has the jiu-jitsu in his back pocket and he strikes first. And we'll see what happens against Makhachev.
Here's the other thing to consider about this fight. It's I believe now it's 5 rounds because it's a main event. I would think it would have to be, right? I'm assuming. I'm looking at Tapology. It says it's 5 rounds. Like, who does that favor? Like, I honestly don't know. I know Makhachev puts on a hell of a pace. I mean, we saw a late finish over Drew Dober that he can still go that long. But I mean, you got to imagine, like you mentioned with Moisés and his strength and conditioning, it's definitely ramped up a bit. So you got to think that's got to help him as well too. So I have no idea who that favors. To be honest, I couldn't tell you here in terms of what's going to transpire in the later rounds, if it does even get that far as well, right?
It seemed like at the end of the Bobby Green fight, he looked a little tired. Like
right.
When he was,
but maybe that's because it's 3 rounds. Maybe if it's a 5-round fight, you pace yourself a little bit better, because Bobby Green is one of those guys you really have to work against, because he's always putting out a lot of action.
Yeah, that's a big factor, I think, heading into this fight, especially if you're betting. It's like, if it does go longer than 30 rounds, like who's going to be the one that's standing out there? Because once someone gets fatigued, man, the other one's going to take over. So yeah, that's an interesting aspect of this matchup. Their first main event and their first 5-round fight in the UFC. Big pressure on both of them.
Do we have the odds up there, Michael? If we do, we'll get him. If not, I know most books have. I mean, I'm seeing Islam Makhachev as high as minus 650 on some of the odds, which is just crazy. And look, I get it. I mean, he's very good. I'm not going to sit here and say otherwise, right? He's a very good fighter. Is he minus? Is Thiago Moisés a minus? Should he be a plus 400 underdog? Absolutely not. This guy is, again, I think every fight we're seeing a more improved version of him. So if I was to do the line, I would go 3-1. I think there's a 3-1 chance that Makhachev can win this fight as opposed to 6-1, because I wouldn't count Thiago Moisés. Here's the other thing we haven't talked about. Thiago Moisés has never been finished in his career. I mean, if it's a 5-round fight and it goes late into the rounds, who knows how either guy's going to look in those later rounds as well. So that's where it's going to get very interesting here. So as far as my pick, John, you know, I'm a big Thiago Moisés fan. Like I said, been there from the beginning, did the first interview. I'm pretty sure I did the first interview with him out of anyone in English. Because if you go watch it, it's me talking very slowly so you can hear the question properly. So I have a lot of respect for Thiago Moisés. Interviewed Makhachev in a media scrum, I think back at UFC Calgary, ages when he beat Cajun Johnson. I think that was the fight. So I talked to him a little bit there, but obviously more history there with Moisés. Anyways, I'm setting all this up because I am a big fan of Thiago Moisés, and I think he has the ability to win this fight. But I got to go with Islam Makhachev. To me, what it comes down to is the wrestling. And you talked about the Beneil Dariush fight. And I know that fight was a few years ago, but Moisés was on his back a lot in that fight. And I kind of feel like the same thing's going to happen here with Islam Makhachev, where he's just going to take him down. And whether he, advances his position or not, or threats from the ground, it'll be interesting. But I don't know if we'll see a finish. I think we could see a decision here. I think it might end up being like this. Or you can fight where you have a situation where you have a guy who's just very much game and is going to give it his all until the final bell. So I think Makhachev might win a decision here. That might be something to look at if you're betting this fight. Maybe look at the decision prop. I don't know if Thiago Moisés gets finished. Like I said, has never been finished in his career. And he's fought guys that do have finishing ability, like an Alex Hernandez, like, Michael Johnson. There are guys. Michael Johnson's a knockout win over Poirier. Like, consider that, like how crazy that is. So I think Moisés may end up going the distance in this one. So the pick's going to be Makhachev, but I will warn people here. Don't be surprised if Moisés goes out there and looks a lot better than you think, and maybe even potentially pulls this one off. That's how high I am on Thiago Moisés. I think this is a classic case where people look at Makhachev as Khabib's teammate, kind of like Olberg when he fought Kennedy and Cheku, where they're like, oh, he trains at City Kickboxing. Mm-hmm. He must be very good. Or Kai Kara France when he fought Royval. Oh, he trains at City. He must be like, a lot of people look too much into the teammate thing, and I think every fighter is unique and different in their own way. Makhachev, like I said, very good. I want to reiterate that because a lot of fans are going to come after me. I've already seen it already, so I want to be very clear about that. But I just think that anyone can be beat, and I think Thiago Moisés has the recipe to defeat an Islam Makhachev. But saying all that, I'm going to Islam Makhachev. Where are you going, John, in this one?
American top team. Guess what they have? They have a stable full of wrestlers, Russians, Dagestanis, everybody, and Thiago Moisés has that in his repertoire. Like, he can go there and pick and choose who he can wrestle with and grapple with, and I'm pretty sure a lot of those guys have wrestled with Islam or his teammates, or all of those guys work out together in that area of the world, right? So they know each other, they know their games. I'm pretty sure he's picking up little tricks here and there. And one thing you gotta remember is Makhachev's only loss is Adriano Martins, right? Another Brazilian that has knockout power. Thiago Moisés, Brazilian with knockout power. I feel like he can go in there and knock out Islam. This is my view. I feel like he can keep the fight on the feet, and he's gonna get taken down. That's not. I'm not saying he's not gonna get taken down. He's gonna get taken down, but he's gonna be able to keep the fight on the feet. He's gonna be able to get back up, use defense, and then be able to let go of some hammers, let go of some strikes, some combinations. And he does have some sick kicks too, right? He can land a kick. And I feel like he might be able to land one of those. And even if he does go to the ground with Islam, he has submissions, man. One thing, a lot of these guys that Islam fought, they don't have leg locks in their repertoire, in their arsenal. Thiago has it. We've seen him use it many times on multiple fighters, even in the Bobby Green fight. Bobby Green was very close to getting finished with a leg lock in that fight. He barely squeezed out of that, and we saw him finish Michael Johnson, right? So I feel like finishing-wise, Thiago has more ways to win, but I feel like this fight will stay on the feet. And Islam's going to try to, keep it on the feet a little bit too longer than he's supposed to. And then Thiago's going to catch him. So
interesting. Wow. Okay. Well, so with that said, I would keep an eye out on that knockout prop then, because that's got to be some crazy numbers. I mean, if you're going all out, if you think Thiago's going to win, I mean, that knockout prop must be insane. I know we don't have the
odds too. Like, why not throw some money on Thiago? Right?
Oh,
he's shown that he can win and he knows how to finish. And we'll see. You know what I mean? Like, it's tougher to take the bet with the odds on Islam, right? Because it's so high. So you might as well throw some money on Thiago. But don't trust me. I'm not a person that bets on fights. So I'm just giving you my pick and what I think is going to happen in the fight.
By the way, Thiago is ranked. My bad on that. I forgot.
Yeah, 14, right?
Yeah, he's 14 now. Because I guess why is Kevin Lee in the I see, this drives me nuts. If your next fight is scheduled in a higher weight class, you should be out of the rankings as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, definitely.
Lee stated time and time again he's not going back down. So that 11 spot should be somewhere else. But anyways, so it's 14 against 9. You know, it's interesting. Like you look at these guys in that bracket. We'll include Lee in there. I think Moises could be competitive with a lot of these guys in here. You know, so it's interesting. So, anyways, bold pick. I like it. I could see it. I got to go Makhachev just because, again, the pace. But we'll see. It's a very interesting fight, and I'm excited for this one. And even if it wasn't a main event, I'd be still very intrigued to see how this fight goes because it's
also I don't think AKA is open though. Like I've heard from people that they're
no.
not really
I saw I saw some photos the other day because Edmund Shabazian's over there now. Did you see that?
Oh, okay.
And he was sparring with Duran Win. So I think it is open, but I don't think Islam's over there because, or maybe I don't know. I don't follow him on social media, but they I don't know if he's able to get over there because of the pandemic. I'm not sure, but we'd have to dig in that a little bit more. But either way, he's regardless of where he is, if it's in Russia, if he's in AKA, those are two good camps. But Moises full time in Florida at American Top Team. So there you go. All right, so there we go. I'm going Makhachev. He's going Thiago Moisés. We'll revisit this, or we'll repost this, I'm sure, close to fight time. All right, let's get to the chat. Thanks for bearing with us here. J Spec Driver, just going to give him a shout out. He says, "Good morning, gentlemen. I know he watches our show. He tweeted us the other day. Appreciate the support, man. Can't thank you enough." Antoine, good morning, John and James. Who in the top 5 of lightweight could you see defeating Islam, and ultimately, what is his ceiling? Who in the top 5 of lightweight could you see defeating Islam? Well, I mean, I think any of them can defeat him.
Except for Connor. I think he
Dustin,
could beat
Gaethje, Dariush, Chandler, McGregor. Yeah, I think McGregor would be the only one. But then, we just talked about Thiago Moisés potentially knocking him out. I think Connor has the ability to do it as well. But I would pick every single guy in the top 5 over Islam, to be honest. And maybe Islam, this is the fight where he shows us that, I don't know, maybe he's a step above or something. But I'm slowing the brakes on a little bit on Makhachev as far as him being a top 5 guy right now. We'll see. I need to see more. Let's get to Joe. How many more fights does Islam have to win before he gets a shot at gold? Well, let's see. He's ranked number 9. I would say at least 3 fights to get a shot.
3 fights. Wow. I feel like it's only 2. I feel like if he wins this fight, he's going to get a top 5 as a present from the UFC, right? Like you took the main event, you took a guy in the lower in the rankings, we're going to give you somebody in the top 5. And then after that, they probably try to push him into that title fight. That's
well, you're saying, yeah, okay, but there's so many moving pieces though in terms of the division, right? If Dustin beats Connor or Connor beats Dustin, that takes up a slot. You've got Gaethje waiting in the wings somewhere whenever he's going to take a fight. I don't know. You've got Beneil Dariush, who certainly made a strong case after his win over Tony Ferguson. And you still got Chandler, who barely lost to Oliveira. I know he got finished, but he gets one dominant win. He's right back in the driver's seat too. So that's why I think it's going to take at least 3 for him to get there, because it's just such a logjam right now. If this was flyweight, if this was women's bantamweight, it would be a little bit easier, but it's not. It's a clogged division. So that's all I'm saying there as well. Antoine says, I also think there's a chance for Islam to be pushed from number 9 to maybe number 7, like how when Marvin beat Kevin Holland, he was pushed from 6 to 3. Yes, I would agree with that.
Yeah, definitely.
People are very recency biased as well. JB in the chat says, do y'all agree with Dom Reyes being the best athlete in MMA? I wouldn't say he's the best athlete. I mean, he's got a lot of athleticism, but I'm sure there's better athletes. Like when I think of good athlete, I think of someone who could compete in almost every sport. I think Reyes could do quite well, but there's got to be someone who's better. Like he's not like ripped or anything,
That's a confusing question though.
I know.
Like athlete, like how do you measure who's a better athlete?
Someone like really explosive that could do well in like a George St. Pierre, I think is a great athlete.
Okay. So you consider him like someone that could do gymnastics and do
and everything, sports. And he could probably, I know he was playing hockey when he was growing up and stuff. Like there's a lot of things I think GSP could do. Is there someone like that comes off the top of my head? Maybe like a Luke Rockhold, I think would be a good athlete. He's long, tall, strong guy, can't take a punch, but other than that, it's pretty good.
What's up with the Khamzat? Like Khamzat turning the fight with Luke
he wants to
Rockhold.
fight at 170. So I don't have a problem with that. People made it such a big deal out of that. But if the guy wants to fight at 170, of course you don't fight Rockhold. But saying that, I mean, that's a huge opportunity. And we've seen Rockhold get knocked out. He's been away for a while. That seems like a fight where you could really propel yourself up far, especially with Rockhold being a former middleweight champion.
Way more than any opponent that he's going to fight at 170. I don't even think they're going to give him a top 15 guy at 170, to be honest with you.
We'll see.
I guess we'll see. But
there's
a lot of things going on with Chimaev nowadays, right? There's a lot of moving pieces. But I was confused. Like, why would you not take that fight? Like, he is clearly not the same fighter he was when he was the champion, and he's a big name, and they're giving you a main event slot against him. Why not jump in there, knock him off, and then
Could be
go
the
for
size.
Western?
Could be the size as well. Like Rockhold is like he's like a light heavyweight. Like he's a really big guy. I've seen Rockhold in person. You could almost pass him as a heavyweight with how tall and long he is. So maybe that's it. Where Khamzat, he's a big guy for obviously 170. The guy can make one like Rockhold could never make 170, whereas Khamzat can. So I think that's part of it too, where it's like he's not going to have that size that he would have. Like Khamzat is a middleweight that can happen to make 170, but like Rockhold's a light heavyweight that can happen to make middleweight, if that makes sense. I think that could play part of it as well.
So
just
all
speculating. I have no insight.
all this hype around Khamzat's like, I'll fight anybody, anytime at welterweight or middleweight. That's done with now, right? We can't say that
it was
anymore,
done. It was done when
Neil Magny, right?
When he was done when he didn't take the Magny fight. Yeah,
exactly, right. So
because Magny agreed. I did the interview with him. He's like, I'm game. So we'll see what happens. Abs talks. What's up, Abs? How's it going? He says, hi, hope you guys are well. I actually think Islam's best win is over Arman, so you can, because Arman is no joke, and I'm sure we're going to see those two fight again in the future, maybe for the title. Yeah, I would. Okay, maybe that could be the case. I think Arman is a very good fighter, but Arman had not had the experience that a Drew Dober had. That's why I think the Dober win's more meaningful. Because you look at who Dober's fought and who he's beat and stuff. To me, it's a little bit more impressive than Arman's done. Maybe Arman, when it's all said and done, when he's Dober's age, he will be better than him. In fact, he probably will be. But I don't know. I would somewhat agree with that, but I also think that Dober, just with the experience, I think that makes it a bigger win for Islam, in my opinion.
At the moment, yeah, it is at the moment. But we don't know where Drew Dober will be in the next year or where Arman will be in the next year. So it's hard to say. But right now, at this moment, you're right. It is a bigger win, but it might be more valuable, the Arman win, eventually in the future.
Abs also says, James, you were right about Khamzat splitting from Dominance. So I want to be clear about that. I don't know why people get confused by this. I'm not singling you out here, Abs, but I posed the question, did Khamzat lead Dominance? People seem to think I said that. I had all these Khamzat and Ali fans coming after me saying, you're spreading lies and all this. It's like, all I'm doing is saying this. The guy doesn't follow him on Instagram, Khamzat, that is. He's not on the website. And I even did the Wayback Machine to look on the website. And you can see that he was on the website and then he was removed. So I was right there. I did make a mistake that apparently Ali was still following Khamzat at the time, but now he isn't. So, and now it seems that he hasn't, and I've sort of figured that as well. And again, I talked about it in the video that I did, that I think part of it has to do with this Kadyrov stuff, where they've kind of pitted Khamzat against Khabib, and you can't do that. I mean, Dominance is Khabib, basically. So, yeah, they've split. It's interesting. I'm just sitting back and watching this whole thing because it's very interesting to me of how, seemingly one of their biggest names in the management group could be leaving. And more importantly, maybe I can get an interview now, John. Maybe, just maybe I can get an interview. That would be great. I'd love to speak to that guy. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I think that's what it has to do with. And I think it's just been kind of hush-hush because obviously it would be a big blow to that management group if he had left, right?
It's a huge blow. It's a huge blow because he's like one of the future stars of the UFC. The UFC has his back. That's very rare for a fighter just coming in after a couple of fights to have. It's like being Sean O'Malley, right? It's like the promotion, the organization loves you. Yeah. So I think his manager is a Swedish guy now.
No,
right?
it's the guy who runs All Stars, the gym. That's what it says in his bio. So yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe you got to reach out to him.
I'm gonna reach out to him. I'll see what I can get. Maybe I can get something out of him. We'll see. I won't get any threatening emails to tell me to take the interview down. So
well, you will get threatening emails once he does the interview.
No, I don't. Hey, listen, I got my bases are covered. If it's not on the website, I'm good. If it's not on the website, I'm good. So as far as I'm concerned, I got that as well. By the way, we've had some management move arounds. I don't know if you saw. Mackenzie Dern's with Paradigm. Did you see that?
Yeah, I saw that. That was last week, right?
Yeah, and then there's been some other. I feel like there was another signing recently where I was kind of like, "Oh, that's interesting." I know Michel Pereira's with Paradigm as well. I don't know if you saw that.
Oh, really? Michel Pereira.
He was with Ruby before, and he switched. So 2 Ruby fighters moving over, and I feel like there was another major, not major, but like one that was like of note of like people moving. Anyways, whatever. We can talk about that later. JB in the chat says, "Is 125 next for Cody?" I've said this I don't know how many times. Absolutely, I think it's next. Why would you stay at bantamweight when you have such a harder path to a title shot when you can go to flyweight? Maybe even just get a title shot right off the bat, which I don't agree with, but I'm only quoting what Jason House told me when I interviewed him, that they were entertaining the idea. But Cody's very close to a title shot at 125. Why not do it? How will he do it 125? I have my doubts. Cutting more weight, your chin's more susceptible. There's a lot of guys who hit hard in that weight class. We'll see. But yeah, I think it's likely he's going to flyweight next. What do you think?
Man, if he does go to flyweight, right, and he goes and fights for the title and he loses, where does he go from there? Like, his fall from being a champion, can you compare it to anybody else? It's not as much as, let's say, a Renan Barao, but it's damn near close, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a sad fall. Maybe it's also like you got to think of he had COVID and he had long lasting effects from that. So I don't know, man. I think he should get his health right fully before he comes back, even if it's at 125. I'd rather see him at 135. You know what I mean? Even though he lost to a lot of the guys already, I still think he could build himself back up in that division.
You should fight O'Malley. O'Malley's really wants to put his
man.
O'Malley wants to put himself on the map. Go fight a ranked fighter. That's what I say. So we'll see. We'll see if he ends up staying on the card. Of course, we might as well segue to that.
Who do you think? Yeah, who do you think is gonna take that fight, O'Malley?
I think it's going to be like I think it's going to be like an unranked guy, or it's going to be a newcomer, because no way O'Malley. Like someone was like, I think Dominic Cruz should fight him. There's no way O'Malley's going to fight Dominic Cruz on short notice. It would be someone that would be a winnable fight for him outside of the top 15. I think like a Ricky Simone, I think would make sense. Someone like that.
I would like to see Brian Kelleher
or Brian Kelleher. There we go. There's
I would like to see that. I'd like to see a veteran step in, a guy that will be a test for O'Malley, not a guy that's just going to get signed and then face O'Malley. Because what if that guy gets signed and knocks out O'Malley in 7 seconds? That's happened before, right? So I don't think they want that to happen.
I kind of feel like it's not going to happen. I think that O'Malley's very selective of who he's fighting. And, I don't think that's a secret, because he should be fighting a ranked opponent. You beat a guy in Almeida who's unranked, you fight a ranked opponent. And, I honestly think they should look at doing that Chito rematch, but I don't think that'll ever happen either, because I think O'Malley feels like he's, I don't know, past that or whatever. But that, if you really didn't lose that fight, dude, you go fight him and let's see what happens. So we'll see. Niko Price versus Michel Pereira, the most underhyped fight on the card. It's up there. Yeah, that's a really good fight. The other fight I really like, and it's not getting a lot of love. And I shouldn't say that, because things will be ramping up next week with the big card. But Carlos Condit and Max Griffin, how good of a fight is that, John? I love that fight.
Yeah, that's a really, really good fight. It's a huge fight for, I believe, for Max Griffin more than anybody, right? Carlos Condit. Where is Carlos Condit in his career? Is he just like hanging on? Is it like a Matt Brown?
He's just hanging on. That's my assessment. I love Carlos Condit. I will never take anything away from the natural born killer, Carlos Condit, the one that, won an interim title and had some really good wars in his career. I'm never going to take anything from that. But you can just see Condit's not the same guy. And you know what it is? It's when you fight Robbie Lawler, you're just never the same. Yeah. Rory McDonald, there's so many fighters like that where it's just not, when you get in those wars, it takes its toll. Johnny Hendricks, a lot of these guys, they're just not the same. And I think Condit, yes, he's on a winning streak, but let's get real. Like the old Condit would have finished those guys. He's getting by on these wins. He's looking good, but it's not, he's never going to make a run for a title here. I actually like Max in that fight. I think he's either going to knock him out, or I think he's going to win a pretty decisive decision in that one. Cause it's a tale of two stories here. You got Max, who's in the prime of his career, and Max isn't young, by the way. He's getting up there in age, but just, really on a roll right now. And you got Condit, who's, he's getting some wins, but he's not being outstanding or anything. So I think Griffin's going to do well in that one.
The pressure that Griffin puts on his opponents is going to overwhelm Condit. I don't think he's ready for that. Even though Condit likes to counter strike, I don't know. He just hasn't had the step. He hasn't had that look in his eyes in his last, even though he won a couple fights, but still, man, he's part of that GSP era, right? So it's like this new generation comes in and they're just better all around. And I think that's what's happening to Condit right now. So it sucks to see, but whatever.
Jay Speck says, shout out to Michael, the producer, always on the show and never on the show. Big thanks, homie. One of these days we'll get him on, and then you guys can judge if he looks like Vicente Luque or not. I still think he does. If Vicente Luque was like in the woods for like a month and grew his hair out a little bit, he'd look like our producer. And I mean that with all respect there, producer Michael. You're looking good these days. I'm just saying you got longer hair than Vicente Luque does. So just pointing that out. Abs talks. Khabib, Islam, and DC are at AKA at the moment. There you go. That's why we got Abs on here. He's always keeping us up to date with this stuff. Antoine, speaking of Luke Rockhold, could he beat any of the top 5 present middleweights? He said he's got some surgeries to help his performance. I'm going no. I think on paper Rockhold has it, but if your chin is not good, it doesn't matter how good you are. Chuck Liddell, latter half of his career, the talent was there, the chin was not there. He nearly beat Rich Franklin. I was at that fight, his last UFC fight, when it was in Vancouver, and I got the poster on the wall over there. You can't see it. He nearly beat Rich Franklin in that fight, but then Franklin just landed one shot. Like Liddell was doing one of those things where Franklin was hurt. He sort of went at him and then and nearly it looked like he was going to finish him. And then Franklin just throws this shot and Liddell's out cold. And it was like, you knew right then and there that it was it. Maybe Rockhold's not at that point. Maybe he pulls an Andrei Arlovsky and somehow goes on a crazy run and his chin's not an issue at all. Because there was a point where Arlovsky was looking like that, but I don't think so. If I'm a betting man, I think all the top 5 beat, like, let's look at that top 5 right now. Seeing who I'd pick. Whitaker, I think, would beat Rockhold. Adesanya would beat Rockhold. Costa, I think, could knock out Rockhold. Jared Cannonier, I think, could knock out Rockhold. Vittori, I think, could give Rockhold some problems. And Brunson, I mean, Brunson might be the only one. But even then, Brunson's got some good, I mean, they trained together, so I don't think that would ever, I know they had trained together, I should say, because Rockhold was at Sanford. So, yeah, I don't know. What do you think? Do you think he'd beat any of the top 5 guys?
I'm just curious what kind of surgeries he's gotten to help his performance. Like,
did he put like granite in his? Did he put like cement in his chin?
I don't.
Otherwise,
know.
I don't know how he's gonna do. Right?
I don't know what kind of surgeries he's getting, but yeah, right now the middleweight division is stacked with killers, dude. Especially that top 5. I don't think any of those guys would. I don't think any of those guys would give Rockhold that much of a problem. You know what I mean? Or vice versa. Sorry, vice versa. I think all those guys would give Rockhold a major problem if they ever stepped into the cage with them. But there's a few interesting fights I would like to see Rockhold take in that top 15, but they're just not one of the top 5 guys.
Ab says, sorry, my bad, James. I should have not said you had a good hunch about it. It's not the extra said it. No, I wasn't singling you out. There have been people who have literally come after me, not only on YouTube, but on Instagram. I get these weird DMs from people being like, you're a liar, you're spreading lies. And it's like, I didn't even say that this happened. I just put the facts out there, and I clearly said in the title. In fact, the very first word on the video was, did he leave the management group? ? I never said he left. People are so sensitive. So anyways, I'm not singling you out, though. I was just
man, you stirring the pot, James.
Stirring the pot, man.
You're known for that now.
J-Spec Driver, James is a management oracle. I'd say 98% of management groups and I are good. The 2%, which are 2 different groups, aren't fans of me. But it's going to happen, man. Like, one of the things I've realized the more you cover the sport is that no matter what you do, no matter how professional you are, there's going to be people who, no matter what, take something the wrong way. And rather than talking to you about it or figuring it out, it's just they hold grudges. It sucks, but you got to move on. There's plenty of fighters during interviews, so that's why I'm not hurting for work at this point. Here we go. We haven't even talked about this yet. What is going on with the Lewis and Gane nonsense? Well, they are doing an interim heavyweight title fight in Houston on August 7th. So I have 2 views on this. The first view is, what are you doing? You just had your champ, probably one of your most entertaining heavyweight champions of all time in Francis Ngannou, a guy who won. He's from Cameroon. He's got a huge fan base. He's a humble guy. Like, he's just exciting to watch. He's knocking everyone out. You have probably one of your most exciting, nothing against Stipe, but like Francis is like got that fear of God, like in him, you know, like he's the last guy you'd want to see in a back alley, Francis Ngannou, because with his knockout power. Right. So here you have this great champ, and now you're fumbling his first title defense because you won't move the fight to September. So there's that side of it where it's like, why could they just this whole thing could have been avoided if there's no title. They could have just made it as the fight, and then the winner fights Francis, and there's no issue. And granted, Francis is not losing his belt, but an interim title, to me, you only use an interim title if the champ's out more than a year. That's when I think you use an interim title. But a couple months, I mean, we're talking like he just won the title in March. That's a couple months ago. Like, it's crazy on that side. And props to his manager, Markel Martin, who, responded back to Dana. You don't see a lot of that happening. Because CAA, they're not just a UFC they're not MMA fighter management thing. They do everyone. They do actors, actresses. So, Dana can do this against the MMA management groups, and they don't have a lot of say in it, because what are you going to do? UFC is the biggest promotion, but with CAA, they rep so many people. They're almost bigger than the UFC in that sense. So good on Markel for doing that. But so there's that side of it. But then there's the other side of it where, okay, I do wonder if Derek Lewis was promised a title shot. I do wonder if Derek was also maybe promised a fight in Houston as well, because he's from there. So that sort of satisfies both of those things. And then Gane just won, and he didn't really take a lot of damage. So I can understand them putting him in that spot as well. So I like the fight. I just think it's kind of crappy for Francis, because he just wants to fight a month later. And why are we like rushing to do these fights? It's like the same thing with Israel Adesanya fighting Vittori. Like, could they not have just waited a bit and let Whitaker had the fight? Like that's another sort of, it seems like the UFC is very much like, we got to get everything going. And also the last thing on this is kind of a slap in the face to Amanda Nunes. She's headlined 5 pay-per-views. I think she'd break the record for title defenses, I think, for this title defense against Pena. And she's now the co-main event or whatever it is. Like, that's kind of dumb. Like, I think you could have been fine. Look, would it have drawn as good as Lewis would? No, but at the same time, like, she is your women's champion. Like, you can take not bad, but you can take like a lesser viewership for one pay-per-view and then go to the next one. So that's my thoughts on that. Your thoughts, John?
Yeah, it's a slap in the face to a lot of people, man. Amanda Nunes, number 1. Number 2, Francis Ngannou, man. He's only been champ for 3 months, and they pulled this stunt on his ass. Like, he is probably pissed, and his management is probably like, what is going on with the UFC? But UFC, when you see this happening, and what's so ironic about this is Derek Lewis, he is first round. John Jones leaves first round, and then Derek Lewis gets the title fight, and he gets the interim title fight. And I believe also that because that pay-per-view is in Houston, and they were originally supposed to say have Francis defend his titles against Derek Lewis, because that's going to sell tickets, right? Derek Lewis is Houston, so they had to keep Derek Lewis on that card. Of course, they're going to put Gane in there, and Gane is probably just right after that fight. They probably told him like, "Hey, do you want to take the fight, interim title fight against Derek Lewis?" And he said, "Okay, of course." And he's going to jump on it, right? The guys that want the opportunity, they're going to jump on it. And when you see stuff like this happen, it makes me think that the UFC is trying to push like to have these pay-per-views. And that's why I believe Kamaru Usman and Nate Diaz are going to fight later this year for the title. I believe this is going to happen. You know why?
We're not surprised.
It's because Colby might outprice himself again, right? Because he wants the money to fight, for the title. And he'll just say, okay, you don't move the needle like Nate Diaz does. Nate Diaz will pay him this much, and he's going to move the pay-per-views with Kamaru. With you,
I don't think that's the reason. I think the reason is Ali legitimately hates Colby, and I think that's because of all the stuff he said, and that you know how he is with like any sort of that's why he hates Conor just as much. I think they hate Colby so much that they do not want to give him that opportunity, and that has more to do than the Nate thing. I honestly think that's it. And of course, Nate's going to outdraw Wonder Boy or Leon or whoever, if there was a title challenger in the wings. But I think it has more to do with that. I don't think it has to do with Colby's drawing power or anything.
Yeah, and like for us and like the fans that kind of understand our viewpoint and understand how things work and should work, they're not going to understand why Nate Diaz is getting it, but the UFC doesn't care about that. The UFC cares about what is moving the needle, and Nate Diaz used to be a guy that didn't move the needle. Now he moves the needle, so he's going to get all the opportunities. And if he does, man, we're going to watch it. We're going to watch
Nate Diaz gets that title shot, that is the worst title shot given in UFC history. The worst one. Nothing comes close. I'd even take Chael Sonnen getting the shot against John Jones. I'd take that over Nate Diaz getting it, because Diaz lost decisively. Like, at least with the Chael Sonnen fight, right? He lost to Anderson. I think it was the first Anderson's fight that he ended up getting the shot against Jones, right? At least that fight, he was winning the fight, and then he ended up losing at the end. Nate Diaz Nate Diaz had a glimmer of a moment where he could have won the fight against Leon, but like, that's it. So that would be the worst thing ever. But yeah, and then anyways, I don't even want to think about that. It would just infuriate me if that ever ended up happening. Okay, let's keep going here as well. Slamming cold pizza and listening to the boys makes my Wednesday. That's awesome. Cold pizza is very underrated. Hence, it's got to be a mom and pop pizza place, though. I think. Did you guys see Merab called out Sean? How would that fight go? And who do you guys have in Lewis versus Gane? Okay, so loaded question here, but Antoine, more than happy to do it. You've been a big supporter here. O'Malley's never taking that fight. Merab would absolutely win a decision. No problem. No questions asked. Take that decision prop if that exists. I'd take Merab all day in that fight. And who do I have in Lewis versus Gane? I'm never picking against Cyril Gane ever again unless he fights Francis. But that guy he'll win. He's going to avoid the shots of Lewis. Even if he gets hit, I think he'll be okay. Way too fast, way too technical for Derek Lewis. I'm taking Cyril Gane in that fight.
Yeah, if I was going to bet on the fight, I'll take Cyril Gane. But it's not going to be the most exciting fight. But the one thing that Lewis does is that he always carries that power into every round. So you never know when he could get the knockout. You saw him do it to Curtis Blades, right? So he could do that to anybody. And he did it to Volkov too, which I don't know, man. It's a hard pick, but I'll take Gane as the safe bet in that fight.
Noah, what's up, Noah? Good to hear from you, buddy. What's up, guys? If you had to pick worst taunting moment gone wrong, is it Colby going after Usman or Bethe taunting Ronda and her comments about mental health? So the only thing I think that Colby went off the rails with the trash talk was the post-fight interview he had where he brought up Usman's, I don't even need to say it. You know what I'm talking about, the whole thing about whatever. I mean, you can't say stuff like that in this day and age. But Colby's whole shtick is controversy. So I don't think I think most of the stuff he said has been okay. There's been some stuff, the Matt Hughes comment, there's some stuff that's definitely gone over the line that I wouldn't be a fan of. The Bethe thing, I mean, it was just dumb. I don't think people, I think that's a little bit nuts that she sort of say that as well. So I'm not entirely sure. Apparently my video is lagging right now. Are you guys seeing it on my end?
A little bit, but the sound is good. The sound is good. Well, with Colby, right? Like, this is the way I view Colby. Colby is a guy that he's borderline controversy, right? He's like dancing on the line of controversy, and at the same time he's corny, and he understands he's corny. He gives these corny nicknames to everybody, and people hate it, but he's gonna keep doing it, and if people hate it, that means he's drawing attention, and that's all that Colby wants is attention. If it's good or bad, he doesn't care. and you got to respect him for that, right? But he's had said some things, right? I could see why people were offended by them. I could see.
Nick versus Robbie too. I think that's the best situation for both men. 100%. I've been saying this for a while. If you've never watched their first fight, please go and watch it. One of the best UFC fights of all time. Love that fight for a variety of reasons, but one of my favorite reasons is the whole commentary. They're absolutely, I'm not going to get too graphic here, but they're like sucking up to the Miletich camp the whole fight. They're talking about how Nick Diaz is making a huge mistake standing with Robbie Lawler. He's at the Miletich camp, and then Diaz knocks him out. Like it was so cool to see that. And that's when I really love Nick Diaz, because Nick Diaz was like not as popular back then. And like, if you were a Nick Diaz fan, it was like kind of like you were like on this, like you were aboard like this bandwagon that wasn't like didn't exist at the moment. And that's when Diaz really made his mark. And people forget Robbie Lawler had like, he was like a hyped up prospect and then lost a bunch of fights, left the UFC, and then came back and won the title. It's a pretty remarkable story what actually happened there. J Spec said, why did Stipe get to hold the belt and Francis has his undisputed messed up? That's like suspect because Alan puts racism word in the mix. I don't like that thoughts. I don't know if it's that. It's the Houston thing, like John mentioned. I think that's more of what it has. If this card was in Arizona or if it was in, I don't know, Florida, I don't think they're caring as much about the interim title. In fact, I think they would have just let Francis have the fight in September. If that was the case. If
racism was involved, John Jones wouldn't get all these.
You know what? That is one thing I'll mention. Like, look, are there times when the UFC is, we're not going to get political here, but I just will mention this quickly. Like, because I always see this argument brought up, the UFC's racist, whatever. Are there times when they make some dumb moves? Absolutely. But here's two guys that are African-Americans that have had plenty of rope, John Jones and Greg Hardy. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, you don't look any further than that. So that's all I'm going to say on that. What's up with this Joe Schilling silliness? Super unnecessary. Yeah, I mean, that whole thing's stupid. What a moron. Like, self-defense. Whatever the guy said, I mean, I always look back at the movie Roadhouse. John, have you seen Roadhouse with Patrick Swayze? Great movie. If you haven't seen it, you know, what's the rule number one when you're managing, when you're a bouncer at a bar? Be nice. You be nice. Joe Schilling didn't be nice. He went straight for the jugular. And you shouldn't do that. And he might get charged now because he's an idiot. And like, that's not the way you handle stuff. Like, especially when you're a trained fighter, like the guy was not hitting him or like attacking him or whatever. I don't know what he said. Maybe he did say some stuff that was out of line, that was racist, whatever. But I mean, you gotta use your judgment there. Pick him up and take him out of the restaurant or something. Don't hit the guy. The guy was lucky he wasn't concussed or wasn't have some serious brain damage. It's crazy. So.
Don't bars have security there? Like at least one.
They do, but I guess they were sleeping on the job when Joe Schilling was coming up there. So it's crazy. They should strip Aljo and make Jan Font for the vacant title with Sandhagen, TJ Sand winner getting next shot. Well, I don't think Font. As much as Font's done well, even Tyson Chartier said I think he needs one more. So I as much as I love Rob Font, I don't think he should get a title shot off that, because how's that fair to Sandhagen? Like, you look at Sandhagen and his wins, one loss to Aljo. Yes, I know Aljo's the champ, but still, outside of that, if you look at the body of work, Sandhagen I think has been a little bit more impressive. If Aljo might come back this year, so I don't have an issue with them like stripping the belt. If we're basing off the Francis thing, let's just pretend that's a unique situation. If Aljo can't fight till next year, interim title, no problems with that. But I think if he's injured, then that's not, they shouldn't strip him. I know people want to see him stripped, but that's a whole other story. So, JB says, I think the Francis situation comes from him agreeing with Jake Paul, and Dana White could be very petty when it's about fighter pay in the company. That might be a small part of it, but that's not the Houston's the reason for sure. Does Tuivasa KO Greg Hardy? Probably not, because Greg Hardy I don't think Hardy's been finished, has he? Did Pereira finish him? I think Pereira might have finished him in that fight.
Yeah.
He did.
I wouldn't be surprised if Tuivasa KO'd Hardy, but Hardy has a chin though. It's not like he just gets clipped and he's rocked. It's like he's usually tired or something when he gets finished. He was tired in that fight against Pereira. That's how he got finished. So I don't see that happening, but it could be a possibility, man. Tuivasa does have some fast hands and some knockout power.
We're going to just take two more questions because I actually have to dart out of here earlier for an interview. We'll wrap things up maybe at 57 after, something like that. I think nobody is mad at Lewis versus Gane, being me over Nunes. I know most people aren't, but I'm just saying that, like, in general, it's not like they needed to do this. I think the Nunes pay-per-view would have been fine. People still would have watched that as well. What happened to title elimination matches like clear number one contender?
No such thing.
Yeah, they don't really do that. Actually, we'll just zoom through these questions here. Jeremy Stevens versus Gamrot. Where do you guys got on that? I kind of give a slight edge to Gamrot in that fight because I know Stevens will look better at 155, but he's just taking a lot of damage, man. Like, that stuff adds up. So we'll see. you think Stipe was offered the interim fight? No, I don't think he was.
Yeah.
I doubt they'd give you a title shot coming off a loss like that. Is Colby playing a character? Is that who he really is? But saying a character gives him confidence to keep being himself. Colby's not what he is off camera, and I can verify that because I've talked to Colby off camera. I've met him in person. We've done interviews in person. Colby is much different off camera. And I've said this before, and take this for what it's worth. One of the easiest guys to get a hold of for an interview compared to most fighters, like super easy on my end. So take that for what it's worth. Hi, James. Have you ever tried to interview Hunter Campbell? No.
That's not going to happen.
Yeah, it would never happen. It would have to be like, and if I did do it, because I've done this before. I remember interviewing Eric Winter years ago. I remember he used to run Fight Pass. The UFC had to have someone on the call with me because they were worried I was going to ask something controversial, which is like not Trent Reinsmith. Come on. And Twain, can Jeremy get cut if he loses this? Will be 5 losses in a row.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
I think so. I don't think he comes cheap either. So there you go. Okay, we'll get 2 more questions here in the chat. No underdog picks this week because there's no card. Are you doing anything this weekend for? I know you're in Korea, but do you celebrate 4th of July or no?
No, I don't celebrate 4th of July. It's American holiday. You celebrate?
No, I don't know, but maybe celebrate it. I don't know because you lived in the U.S. I wasn't sure if you because you were,
nah,
you were born in the U.S. Correct?
No, I wasn't born in the U.S. I was born.
You lived over there.
I just grew up in the U.S. But yeah, when when in Rome, you do what the Romans do, right? So wherever country you're in, you just follow their celebrations.
Like if I lived in the U.S. or I lived overseas, I'd still celebrate Canada Day, but that's just.
Oh yeah. I don't think I'd celebrate. I'm not like born in the U.S. either, so I'm not an American citizen. So it's just I don't celebrate none of those. The only holiday that I love that the U.S. has is Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only holiday, and sometimes I'll go out and do some Thanksgiving stuff. But other than that, nah. We got another question.
Yeah, last one. Any update on? I don't know how to pronounce that guy's name. I'll let you take it.
Talik Zinbekov. Who is that? I don't even know who that is.
There you go.
The Asian Lion.
I don't know. We'll have to look that one up. But we're not going to end this on an awkward note. I will be back. It is Canada Day tomorrow, so I'm actually, my wife and my son have the day off. My son's off daycare tomorrow, but I will be doing my Q&A tomorrow, and I'm going to do like 1 or 2 interviews tomorrow. Do a little bit of work, but I'll probably take advantage of the nice weather we're having here in Vancouver and go swimming. But I will be doing my Q&A tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern time, 8 a.m. Pacific time on my second channel. Other than that, I have an interview with Valentina Shevchenko dropping. Should have already dropped, actually. I'll be promoting that later today. Got a couple other cool interviews as well. Follow me on Twitter and on Instagram at Lynch on Sports. John, what do you got coming up? Anything you want to plug, and then we'll get out of here?
No, just I got a bunch of interviews coming out from My MMA News and from Sportskeeda and SCMP. Just go on my channel, Kumite TV, or just type in my name and you'll be able to find it, or follow me on social media, JHK MMA.
Thanks so much for watching, everyone. Sorry we're darting out of here a little bit early. I'm James Lynch. He is JHK. Another shout out to producer Michael for making this happen behind the scenes. We will see you a week today, previewing another upcoming notable fight. Have a great long weekend. If you guys are in North America, I should say. We'll see you next week, and thanks so much for watching.